YouTube, what the crap's going on? HeirofCarthage here, back in Total War Rome 2, where we're going to see I think it's Johan. Maybe he got this from someone else, but he probably just renamed himself, is my guess. He's going to be taking the Suebi against a 10 sword follower Boii army. And there's also some Celtic warriors, a little bit of Levy Freeman, one noble horse. So 10 sword followers is a difficult force to be reckoned with for almost any faction. So this is a somewhat brutal army. Now, obviously, in order to get the 10 sword followers, the Boii player paid the price of having little to no cavalry support. And with heavy horse being a pretty good cavalry, especially against the Suebi are all their units are like medium to light for the most part. They don't really have heavy units, and most of their guys don't carry a lot of armor. This makes them particularly vulnerable to heavy cavalry charges. So for the Suebi to face that much heavy cavalry is typically a big threat, but I guess that probably the Wodenaz spears, the cheap spear levy, and all those other units, maybe combined with the Cimbri bowwomen, have dissuaded the Boii player from feeling like heavy horse is the right choice, and they're just going like super heavy on infantry now. The Suebi army in this case has a main line of Bloodsworn, which I kind of like. These guys are cheap, and they're supported by a Berserker and a Wodenaz spear general. And then each flank is kind of self-supported with a Wodenaz spear, a Berserker, a Cimbri bowwomen, and a Noble Rider. So it's the same over there. And then he's got a couple of Germanic scouts. Well, maybe at least one. Yeah, 2 Germanic scouts, because here's the other. Again, the Boii army is 3 bowmen, 2 levy free, 10 sword followers, 4 Celtic warriors, and a noble horse. So very sword-heavy army. The Boii, though, is going to give up all of its mobility in order to try and overpower the Suebi, pretty much, is what they're going for. Let's take a look at the overhead view of the battle as it unfolds. You can see the Suebi is working on 2 flanks, which is going to allow them to basically try and draw the Boii into a poor engagement. If the flanks are attacked, so say for instance we come back out here and let's say that the Boii moves to engage this flank, the center can then try and hit those guys in the back while holding against his center units, and then same thing over here. So it gives the Suebi some chance to try and go for more favorable engagements. Now, the Noble Riders are not a pick that you see every time with Suebi. It is a heavy melee cavalry. It's pretty expensive for what you get out of it, but it's a good cavalry unit. And the thing that you gotta understand about using units like this is you gotta use that mass effectively. And what are the sword followers good at? Well, they're pretty good on the charge. They're heavy melee infantry. They have great morale. They've got really solid armor, very good weapon damage for their price. And so using this heavy melee cavalry like this is a good use, where he's going to come in and basically take away the charge opportunity from the sword followers. He's going to eat a volley of javelins doing it, but this is going to allow the Wodenaz spears to come in without getting completely destroyed by the sword followers, and then the Berserkers to support. There's some Celtic warriors over here. The Berserkers will make mincemeat of them. And then over here, the Levy Freeman has kind of pulled up to stand in the way here. The Wodenaz spears will absolutely throttle Levy Freeman. This will not even be a fight. Yeah, the Wodenaz spears will gladly take this. So they're going to get in here and just absolutely wreck these Levy Freemen. Not a fight the Levy Freemen want to be in. And now, again, remember earlier how I said if the Boii continues to peel off into this fight, now the Bloodsworn, who are under the influence of fast charge, are going to have an opportunity to rear charge these sword followers who are pinned up against Berserkers and Wodenaz spears. Wodenaz spears are struggling, but still 60 kills in here versus sword followers. And then check out the rear charge from the Bloodsworn. Very nice play by the Suebi player. Levy Freeman, or the Spear Levy and Bloodsworn just coming in here, and they are going to put a pretty good... There's a bit of a weird charge because these guys just went past, so only part of his unit impacted. But we did have units over here that were under the influence of fast charge, and they're going to get good charges. 67 kills immediately right there, and then 40 kills racked up on this Bloodsworn, 20 on this one, and climbing. This one didn't have fast charge activated on it, so that's still pretty good. This flank right here, the Noble Riders wrapped up those Levy Freemen, and because a lot of units have been transferred here, it looks like this flank for the Boii is weak, and the Suebi players taking advantage of it, which they need to, because this Bloodsworn is going to get hacked down by the sword followers after a good start. But again, the Boii here are being overwhelmed, but they're going to get reinforcements from more sword followers, so this is going to be a very nice use of the sword followers here. That is going to be a tough unit to crack. Same thing here where it gets a proper charge. They are overwhelmed by numbers, but the sword followers are better just in terms of overall quality. Cimbri bowwomen are taking shots at these guys while the Bloodsworn continue to fight. This flank is starting to get wrapped up, though. A few sword followers left. The berserkers finally dying, but 126 kills. These berserkers over here, 54 kills, have not gone berserk yet. Scout cavalry is good for just this very thing, getting into skirmishers. It's got very nice melee attack and damage for how cheap it is and how fast it is. So against squishy units like bows or slingers or something like that, they're going to be very good. You'll have to watch out versus, say, like a heavier peltist unit or something unless you were to get a good charge. Celtic warriors are trying to defend the bows. Noble riders are back here now as well. The berserkers here have broken through, 101 kills. They will get charged, though, by the sword followers. Yeah, that's going to be bad for the berserk. Well, actually, I don't know if the sword followers had a charge order, and I don't think the berserkers had a charge order, so I think both units kind of walking through each other, which that ends up working out better for the Suebi than it's going to the Boii. But yeah, these sword followers over here are going to tank out a lot of kills versus these Wodenaz and Spear Levy, but they can hold. This archer's being a bit mismicroed chasing a unit, but otherwise, nicely played so far by the Suebi. This flank is going to wrap up, so the Suebi is going to have more units. These noble riders are going to be a key player in the late game because of just this. Rear charges from the noble riders are crushing some of these sword followers, which would otherwise be a very tough nut to crack in just straight up infantry melee. However, this noble horse just came plowing into this situation here too, and that noble horse, there is no cavalry counter tactics used against it, and it has easily racked up over 100 kills very quickly because it's a heavy melee cavalry with good stats. Very heavy melee cav, I think, actually. Yes, and it's racked up 150 some odd kills very quickly. Now, it's not being cycled out, and that's a problem, and it may be because it's pinned by noble riders, but there's still a lot of sword followers here. There's sword followers, Celtic warriors, sword follower, sword follower, sword follower. Yeah, so there's a lot of sword followers left, so this battle's not over yet, and the Suebi general is starting to suffer here. The Wodenaz spears, if used properly, they can get a decent number of kills on the sword followers, but in a head-on engagement, they don't do well, and they're starting to suffer from that, and the Suebi general is about to be killed. And that's always bad news for a barbarian faction when your general gets killed. He did use the Pride ability while he was in the middle of this fight, but again, look how many Boii are left here. Though, good news is, there's 2 Cimbri bowwomen left on the battlefield, one there and there. He's got this noble rider, he's got this noble rider, and he's going to be able to do a lot of damage. Celtic warriors are going to be particularly vulnerable to those charges. These berserkers are going to be charged in an attempt to basically just tie down some of these sword followers. The noble horse is alive, 165 kills, but the scout cavalry is alive, and it's clutching out some key kills here against the Celtic bows so that they can't be used against the Suebi in late game, which this is bad for the Celtic bows because these guys would be very good against berserkers and other stuff like that in late game. And these berserkers are in here. They haven't gone berserk yet, but they stayed there long enough. They do have headhunt, so they will be unbreakable at the moment. They'll hold out so the noble riders get a nice rear charge here. And the berserkers, 193 kills. Only 7 of them left, but the guys that are there do have some fantastic stats. The noble horse gets caught by a noble rider. Typically, the noble horse is going to win that fight, but they're kind of outnumbered, and the enemy general died. And at this point, the game goes to the Suebi, so nicely played by the Suebi player here. Few key elements, I think, that helped this thing turn out the way it did. The lack of horse ended up kind of being a bad deal for the Boii in the end. You got to remember that the infantry of the Boii is great. It really is, and this army certainly has merits. It's a bit spammy, but it certainly has merit in being tough in the right situations. However, you got to remember that as the Boii, you are also, yes, your units are heavy and they have better armor and morale, but they're still vulnerable to heavy cavalry charges, and the Suebi noble riders demonstrated that several times. And just a couple of units of heavy horse could have made a huge difference in this battle. Being able to charge Bloodsworn, berserkers, and other units that are fairly lightly armored and spread thin would have been pretty decisive against the Suebi. Now, they were guarded by Wodenaz and noble riders and all other stuff, but, I mean, just even a simple opportunity to do so. You saw how many kills this noble horse got when it was just thrown into the midst of a battle. And heavy cavalry wouldn't get quite that much, but it could get almost as much for about half the price of that noble horse. So YOLO into the front of thin Suebi lines, as long as you don't take too many javelins, can be actually pretty devastating, as you all saw in that last Suebi battle versus Pontus. So definitely something that you have to try and use against the Suebi. They do have ways to fight back against it, but very nice kills on the Wodenaz spears. Well done with the Bloodsworn, and the berserkers all ended up paying out pretty nicely here. The scout cavalry here, 149 kills with almost no losses, so that unit did spectacular. And then for the Boii, you can see when these sword followers like this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, those ones here, when they get left to combat long enough, they're going to be good. But the ones that got overwhelmed properly by the Suebi, he effectively knocked out about 6 of these sword followers without them accomplishing a whole lot. So that was really what helped win the battle for the Suebi. Hope you all enjoyed this one. HeirofCarthage signing.